Welcome to the Jyotish project. My name is Sachin Sharma, and we're doing this series called How to Study Jyotish. And this is lecture 5, The Three Ladders: Theory, Technique, Reorientation. So let's get right into it. So, the objective of this lecture is to reveal a grounded and realistic model of how real learning in Jyotish actually unfolds, not as a linear path, but as a spiral of theory, technique, and reorientation. You could also call it transformation or recalibration of some sort of like change that happens in the person's psyche, the way they are relating to the subject and the contents of the subject and life in general. So, we will explore why information without context leads to confusion, how technique must remain rooted in telos meaning aim, objective, a goal, a final goal, and how genuine insight arises not from accumulation but from inner restructuring. So, this lecture offers a three ladder map to help you locate where you are, what kind of study is being asked of you, and how to move forward with rhythm, clarity, and sincerity, no matter what your level is. So, this is not a it's just to orient the psyche when a student is this is what was missing. Again, it comes from a pain point. These kinds of discussions never took place when I was beginning my Jyotish studies, and even now, these are we need certain frameworks, some kind of discussion around these ideas to be able to orient ourselves a little bit so that we at least know how to even progress, how to look, where to look, what pace to look at. These are the things that are missing in Jyotish studies. So, these are the 6 sections we're going to cover. Why we need a model for learning Jyotish. The first ladder, theoretical foundation. The second ladder, technical application. And the third ladder, reorientation. How these ladders are sort of spirals and not just stacks, and they're also connected. These ladders also interact with each other, and where you are on the ladder right now. So, where one is on the ladder, how to figure that out, what kind of questions to ask to figure that out. So, let's start. Why we need a model for learning Jyotish? So, see, one of the biggest reasons we as students feel overwhelmed or stuck in our Jyotish studies in a journey with Jyotish is because we don't have a working model for how the learning process should actually unfold. How to even think about it, right? We expect a straight line. We expect mastery over a few courses. We think that once we understand a planet or a technique, we are done with it, right? And whether at what point is one ready to begin counseling work, or at what point is one not simply wanting to believe in Jyotish but is actually understanding what the subject matter is talking about. So whether I finish studying grahas or rashis, or what kind of yogas or techniques, or at what point in my studies do I even figure out where I stand, what am I becoming through these studies, and what am I gonna develop into through these studies. So we expect mastery quickly. We don't know how much of it needs to be done, what mastery looks like actually. Is it even possible for a subject like Jyotish? So we think that once we understand something, we are ready, right? And the layers and the depth of it, and all the sometimes you're just in our own echo chamber. We think we understand, we know, and we start counseling and make blunders and cause more pain than healing to oneself and others. So Jyotish definitely doesn't work like this. It's not a flat subject. It's a living darshana. It's a philosophical discipline that requires dialogue, contemplation, and rigorous technical application, rigorous studies of the technicalities. You have to stay away from intuition and spiritual insights and all of these ideas which create manipulation and makes one think that if I know numerology, face reading, palm reading, and a little bit of Jyotish, then I can be a Jyotishi. No, you don't need to know any of those. You just need to know Jyotish. And if we understand the proper formula for Jyotish, how it works, and make the system work, we can flourish. We can build a darshanic perspective, darshanic relationship with this discipline. And like all real systems of knowledge, Jyotish too unfolds in layers. So without a model, we as students fall into two traps mainly. We stay in theory, consuming endless concepts, but never being able to apply them. Or we skip techniques, chasing methods, shortcuts, spiritual ideas, intuition, right? We start thinking that, oh, the chart will just speak to me. Like, oh, I'm looking at the chart and this is what's popping out of the chart. That's a horrible way to study Jyotish and do readings. That's a very advanced stage. And not in the sense that it's a better stage. Advanced can sound like, oh, it's maybe I can, if I start doing the advanced stuff early on, I'm such a pro. So egoic way of looking at it is really wrong. Really beginner basic stuff, if that's fully absorbed, that in and of itself can do wonders. So we don't want to do all of these things. We want to understand the system, architecture, the philosophy of the system, contemplate it through and through, and then build it in layers. So in both cases, we miss the real purpose. That is not to just know Jyotish, but to see differently. So we want to have a change in perspective, not just have information, but having that information having entered the heart in some sense of the understanding is profound. So that's why we need a model. And that's why we need a model, a way of understanding what kind of learning happens where, how each stage relates to the whole. So in this lecture, we'll explore three ladder model. The first ladder is just theory, second is just application, and third is just realization, reorientation, recalibration, transformation. So you don't graduate from one to the next, you cycle through them again and again at deeper levels. So when I really enjoy now studying beginner stuff, beginner sutras, right? And you will have noticed this in some of the videos, like how I'm going back to chapter 1 in Parashara Hora, which everyone skips because it has no application technique. It has But it has philosophy. It tells us what Jyotish is about. If it says Surya is Jagad Utpatti Karanam, and then later a sutra tells us Sarva Atma Cha Divanatho. If sun is here in this sutra, Rishi Parashar is telling us that it's Jagad Utpatti, it's the cause of creation, cause of coming into being, cause of becoming itself happening. And then another sutra tells us it's Atman, Sarva Atman. So now, when these two sutras will have a dialogue in your mind, your understanding will become deeper. The way you'll counsel will become deeper, and it's not impractical. It's very practical. In fact, it's how you'll stay grounded. You wouldn't call sun is the ego, like how they say in Western astrology. It's your persona, and all these like words are thrown around so easily, carelessly. We don't want to do that in our studies. We want to progress in a different fashion. So we don't graduate from one ladder to the next. We spiral through them. It's not a staircase. It's a up down spiral, and these ladders are sort of interacting with each other. It's a sort of a maze. It's sort of this puzzle. So because so and once we see clearly, confusion begins to naturally dissolve. It's a very natural process of the dissolution of confusion. It's not something to be forced. It just be like, oh, I get it. Ah, that's why this is like this. And you wouldn't have to force Jyotish onto your psyche. You wouldn't have to believe in anything. So because you stop asking, why don't I get it yet? So that impatience that kicks in. We start asking, what kind of seeing is being asked of me right now? How do I approach this? What is it telling me this particular sutra about, let's say, Shani or Saturn, let's say Sun or Mars? So what is it telling me at this moment right now? What sense is it? How is it making sense to me? And if it's not, that's okay, right? You have to understand that all of these interact with each other, and when you start experiencing it as a matter of fact by experiencing birth charts, and uh, when you apply it formulaically like a formula and it works, that's when your connection to the subject matter will deepen as well. So we need learning models so that we don't get lost in all of this. It's a subtle art, and subtle disciplines are very easy to get confused in because it's so subtle, obviously, and also because manipulation, self sabotage, deceiving yourself in your own studies and your own understanding of the subject is very easy when matters are tend to get metaphorical easily and metaphysical easily. It it creates a lot of confusion in the psyche. So the first ladder is theoretical foundation. So all true study must begin with structure, not with intuition, not with spiritual ideas. Don't evoke that word at all, spiritual or all of these things. Just structure, formula. What is the formula? What is the math? What is this? What is the method? What is the discipline? And how rigorously can I study this? And just go into the bare bones skeletal structure of the subject matter. So before we interpret charts, apply yogas, or look at dashas, timings of events, we must understand what Jyotish is made of. So this is the first ladder. This is the ladder of theory, architecture, and foundational clarity. So all your doubts should be absorbed by the teacher. The teacher, whoever's your teacher, you need to debate, argue, have a dialogue, communicate, obviously respectfully and sincerely, but with a genuine curiosity. Your questions should be endless, and the teacher should be able to absorb all of them as much as they can. And whatever they don't know, they must admit and must figure it out with the student. They become the student in the process. So this includes what are grahas? What is their role in structuring experience? You want to ask more foundation. We want to ask what is Mars? We don't want to ask first what is Jupiter. We want to ask what is a graha itself. Why are they using the word graha? What is it implying? What is the philosophical implication of this word? So what are rashis? Really not as signs, symbols, because signs is animal symbols, signs. These are all Western astrology ideas. What is a rashi? What is that word? Where does it come from? What is it indicating? Why this 12 division of 30 degrees each? Does it have anything to do with the stars, with the constellations, or is it spatial? Is it psychospatial? What are they talking about? What are bhavas? How what we've started translating is houses. No, what is bhava? What is bhu? What is the root bha? Why is that root being evoked for a bhava? What does it do? Why does it? How does it make it all very subjective? How do they emerge from the self's orientation to life? What are avasthas, yogas, dashas? What is kala chakra? What is kal? Why aren't Jyotishi speaking of kal? Because even in chapter 1, Rishi Parashara, Trikalagyam, like when Rishi Maitre asks Rishi Parashara, you are the knower of the three times, you're studying kal, you knower of Trikalagnyam. So Kal word has to be understood. What is Kala Chakra imagery that gets evoked a lot? Especially, it's preserved in Buddhism, but it's a Jyotish idea. It's a metaphysical, time-based idea about causality. What is Satkarevad? Where does that word come from? What's the connection between Jyotish and Sankhya? We need to ask all these questions. Why are they meaningful? Why are these words so meaningful? Avastha, a state, is how it's translated. What is karma? What is Kal? What is Atman? What is the purpose of seeing? So, this is some philosophical, theoretical foundation, but there's more theory, which is the sutras itself. So, we want to do all of this work initially for like at least a year or two or three to like really build our foundation, really take our roots deep. The theoretical foundation is not about memorizing lists. though memory smriti is a big part of the learning process in Jyotish. It is about grasping the worldview that makes Jyotish coherent. We want to absorb its local vocabulary, native vocabulary, its philosophical depth of those words, of having a deeper relationship with Sanskrit, finding respect, reverence for the language, for Sanskrit, which is not merely a language. It's a way to codify metaphysics. It's Sanskrit is the perfect tool to express metaphysical ideas because the way it's consciously constructed, which is the literal meaning of the word Sanskrit, that which is krit, san- consciously, carefully constructed. So without this, everything else becomes hollow. So you may apply a rule, but you won't know why it works. You may learn techniques, but you'll be interpreting without understanding, and then the counseling would be distorted. Your own projections will be active, and it's just a mess. So, this first ladder will give us what? It gives us four main things. It gives us orientation. So, you know what kind of system, what kind of discipline we are even approaching. What are we even trying to do here? Vocabulary. So, we stop misusing technical terms. We don't call a graha a planet. We call a graha a graha. We use the word Rashi. It's Rashi. It's not signs. It's not houses. It's bhava. Jyotish is Jyotish. It's not astrology. It is not Vedic astrology. It's Jyotish. Hierarchy. So you understand which principles come first, which emerge later. In the next lecture, we're going to cover this. Why we should study Rashi's grahas before everything else. A lot of the teachers make this mistake of teaching Rashis first or how Bhavas first. No, it's wrong. It creates a lot of confusion. Context, so you don't confuse Jyotish with pop astrology, therapy, or fortune telling. So you know what Jyotish is grounded in, what is its philosophical presupposition, and what is its philosophical goal, right? So these are very important. So this is where real learning will begin. So by entering the system with humility to ask, what is this, before even asking, how do I use it? Right? So theory is just, what is this? What is this structuring uh, components that construct the system? And once your components are there in place, these components start having a very deep conversation with each other. It's an internal dialogue and an external dialogue with the colleague, students, teacher, and whoever. And it makes the process much richer. So, only then does technique become meaningful, application becomes precise. Only then do you begin to see what Jyotish actually is. Your connection will deepen, it'll become more heartfelt, holistic, sort of deeper. I hate that word actually, holistic, a more heartfelt experience. So, the second ladder is technical application. So once a basic foundation is laid, some philosophical ideas have been cleared out. Now certain Ganit mathematical parts, astronomical ideas, but also applying those ideas starts. So the distinction between just theory and technique, the flow is it's interconnected. So initially, if you're studying just Mars, Jupiter, Venus, all of these grahas, Shukra, Guru, you are having a moment of also of technical application, but not too much, right? And then when you get into technical application, then truly all the theory will kick in. Whether one should just focus on theory first and then have this clear bifurcation, clear distinction, and then enter theory, technical application. No, it flows into each other. So these ladders are parallel to each other, but they also have rungs connected. So you can always jump from ladder to ladder, and that makes the process more rich. So we are not, we're trying to have a framework. We don't want to have rigidity with these ideas, because then we are using these ideas to make it easier for us. We don't want to create another block, we don't want to create another box. So once a foundation is laid, the next ladder will naturally also emerge, technical application ladder. This is where most students feel excited. This is where we want to use it. We want to use what we're learning. And also where many of us get lost. I got lost here for a long time, and the technique scavenging, begging technique, begging and digging in trash can of the internet, and looking for Jyotish to work, just listening to videos, YouTube, reading articles, and trying to figure out the system that is so lost and broken. It's a very horrible state. One of the best things that happened to me was completely shutting myself out of all of this noise and just focusing in cultivating a relationship with the teacher and building my trust and making the system work. But before that happened, I had to go through a series of 10 or 15 really bad teachers. So, application includes what? Includes basically drawing the chart, reading charts, assessing grahas, rashi, bhavas, understanding graha strength, dignity, aspects, avasthas, interpreting yogas, dashas, transits, and comparing charts for relationship, relocation, timing. These are all advanced stuff. So every ladder will have its own advanced level, beginner level. Even the theory is not a beginner part. Theory itself will have beginner theory, intermediate sort of theory, and advanced theory. And really philosophical ideas where you start doing more research based work. Same with technical application. There'll be easier, simpler application, and then it builds and it'll naturally build. You don't have to force it, and usually advanced is not better. Beginner and intermediate is more than enough to do profound work. So, in other words, how do I use all of this? This is the main question. This is necessary. Necessary. Jyotish is not abstract metaphysics. It is a system designed to be applied. Obviously, it's applied metaphysics. It's psychometaphysics. It's the missing method of metaphysics. So, but here's the danger. So, if we apply without understanding, we will confuse technique for truth. We'll begin to see rules where there should be reflection. We'll seek predictions when we should be asking questions, and we will use Jyotish, but we'll not let Jyotish have an impact. Let Jyotish use us. So we'll project onto the subject rather than being able to see the subject for what it is. So the objectivity of the subject matter loses. That's why every Jyotishi has their own Jyotish. It's become like tarot though. But when you see these old texts like Parashara Rishi's text or other texts, they're trying to come up with a formula for a psycho-mathematical, psycho-geometric formula to assess subtle metaphysical karmic nature and structure of reality things. So formula meanings it needs to become reproducible. It needs to become scientific, but that we are very far away from that right now. Though we're getting closer every decade and probably faster now. So the second ladder is where the risk of spiritual bypassing, which is a lot of narcissistic manipulation in subtle arts, spiritual arts is spiritual ego is one of the biggest dangers, as they say, as the masters say. Projection, over identification becomes real. So we don't want to ever see Jyotish as something spiritual. It's just a metaphysics of earth. It's relevant to how experience is being shaped here, how karma is unfolding here. It's not something so magnificent. It is beautiful. I am obsessed with it. I love it. But we don't want to delude ourselves and make it make make it be sort of like become a manipulation sort of thing, right? I don't know how to express this, but it's not something we want to keep it grounded as much as possible. Is what I want to say. We don't want to go into too many abstractions. We want to keep it grounded, rooted in first principles, certain philosophy, and apply and see and test it and apply it and see it for ourselves through proper studies. So you may get good at readings, but lose the thread of darshana. That's the one mistake we don't want to do, because you might become a. You can even do good readings with tarot cards. So what's the point, right? And that's why to study and go through this entire process of practicing and learning Jyotish? Might as well do other or one of these other occult arts, hidden arts of wanting divination arts or study Western astrology, because Jyotish is profound. It's a darshanik, Sankhya, Yoga, Ayurveda. Jyotish is just so much connected. It's so much richer. So we don't want to lose that. We want to. You may become accurate, but not insightful. More therapeutic. We want to therapize the process also. We don't want to just be throwing a wet towel into our whoever we are counseling into their faces. We want to have skill. We want to do things with skillfulness and make it therapizing, make it therapeutic. So how do you engage technical learning without distortion? By remembering that application is not the goal; it's the testing ground. Right? So we want to test the application makes our experience and relationship to Jyotish deeper. So you may apply to test your understanding, you apply to sharpen your perception, you apply it to see whether the system is reshaping your sight, whether you're just performing cleverness. A lot of it is cleverness. Once your Jyotish work is over, you go back to living like no real change has happened. It's as good as become being any having any job, blue collar job, any job. No, Jyotish is existential. It's working with your heart. It needs to be a deeper process that changes your entire being. It must affect you so deeply, the realizations of its truths. If this is true, what does that even mean? So that second order questions need to be asked, and it creates a confrontation in the psyche, and the burden of consciousness has to be resolved through proper means. So, this ladder is essential, but it must remain in service of clarity and not in control. Only then can it carry you into the final and most subtle dimension of the study. So, what is that subtle dimension of the study? It's reorientation. This is the third ladder. So, the final ladder cannot be taught. It arises naturally again, but it can be pointed to. It is the moment when Jyotish stops being something you study and starts becoming something that studies you. So, it starts impacting you and starts changing you, changing your perception a little bit, at least. So, this is reorientation, where the darshana begins to reshape your perception, where it becomes darshanik drish. It actually changes your drishti and reveal your unconscious patterns and quickly reorder your relationship to self, time, karma, and others. It's a deeply self analytical, self awareness process, and a lot of cleaning and shadow work has to be done at that point where you've learned the theory, you've applied it, now things start making sense. Now you're learning and absorbing things about yourself, and now things are going to start shifting. The patterns have become self evident and clear. You begin to see that the chart isn't a map of fate, it's a mirror of entanglement, that the grahas aren't external forces, they're active processes within your own psyche, that your issues aren't random, they're karmic repetitions rooted in attention and the entanglement of attention into identification with the phenomenon of life. That your learning is not complete when you interpret, it is complete when you change how you see itself. When the one interpreting itself is having a change of heart. So, this ladder is not about knowledge, it is about contact. A graha once memorized in a list becomes more alive, a part of the lived reality and experience, and becomes more real. Jyotish becomes more matter of factly than something fascinating or something that just merely evokes curiosity or just a bunch of concepts. It's not just, oh, interesting. It's like, whoa, interesting. It blows your mind and changes things and makes you ask questions, and you become more silent and more mature in your studies also gradually. So you feel its voice in your thoughts, your desires, your fears. Start seeing it as a circuit, uh, a sort of a map, literally your how you are wired in some sense. So you stop asking, what does this yoga mean? You start asking, what is this moment showing me about myself? And what are the means to change this, accept this, grieve this, or different kinds of things? So it's a very important ladder, actually. This is the whole point of the subject matter, this to climb this final ladder. There's not a final ladder, but yeah, to climb this ladder. And slowly you begin to live in rhythm with what is arising, not trying to fix it, not trying to escape it, but seeing it with luminous attention. This is what Jyotish was always meant for the restructuring of the one who sees. This is not a ladder you climb with effort. It arrives through return, revision, rhythm, consistency, humility, which naturally Jyotish causes. Judgment. Someone said once, Jyotish is the study of judgment. It's not. It's the art of judgment. It's not the art of judgment. Jyotish is the art of acceptance. It's the art of observance. So, and once it begins, it marks the shift from studying Jyotish as a subject to living it as a student of light. So you become a that's when we become a Jyotishi. So I'm not a Jyotishi right now in this true sense. And I am a student who is trying to become a Jyotishi. I don't have the Jyoti yet. And we need to have that kind of orientation so that we stay real with the complexity of the matter that we're trying to study, the plan of the universe in some sense. So if we want to stay really grounded. So how these ladders spiral, they're not a stack, they are a spiral. So most people assume learning is linear. First you learn the theory, then you practice the techniques, and then you gain wisdom, and you're done. You're a Jyotishi. Now you can open your shop. You don't need to study the subject anymore. People come, you speak wise things, and it's finished. And it's the worst way to study this subject, and that's why Jyotish has become what it has become. That's not how any real darshana works. Whether you study Vedanta, whether you study Rishi Gautama's teachings, what they call Buddhism, uh, whether you call whatever you want to study, it's not how real disciplines do not work this way. Darshana's real darshanic insight, understanding doesn't work like this. So these ladders, theory, technique, and reorientations are not steps on a staircase, they are loops in a spiral. And sometimes something, a beginner idea that you thought you'd mastered, whether it was some technical application, would reveal to you how a chart would appear to you that you're not able to understand, right? And it's not about understanding, it's the complexity of the nuance of it, not learning how to even communicate the subtle ideas, being able to articulate properly, right? So they're part of the training process, and we are not trained like this in Jyotish. That's the worst part. You're given all this information, which is available on the internet, and no real training is given. Of the teacher never sits down with the student's birth chart or gives an experience of Jyotish to the student. Uh, how to counsel is never discussed. You're just given this information and certain classes certificate, and then you're like, oh, go. Now you just need to start practice. It's no, like a much deeper process needs to take place. We need to really rethink how we are studying Jyotish. So you don't graduate from one to the next, you revisit them again and again at deeper and more subtle levels. You return to theory with new questions after struggling with application. You refine technique after being humbled by your own projections. You glimpse transformation only to discover your foundation was incomplete. So you'll see you've transformed a little bit, but then you'll be a certain transit, certain dasha would start, and you lose sight and you fall and you become really lost again. Even though now you're a Jyotishi, you've called yourself a Jyotishi and you're identifying with that. But it's such a humbling process. This is not it really takes you for a spin and really empties you. Like the moment you say, I get it, uh, something would appear that will flip you upside down. So this is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. That's the whole point, to put you in touch with complexity of life and humble the psyche, break it. The idea is to break the psyche. Each return will reveal something that we missed before. and every sutra would do that. So one of the things that I'd recommend is to write down sutras on flashcards and keep it around you like a stack of sutras, and just view those sutras every now and then, develop a relationship with them. So each cycle deepens your orientation. Each insight opens up a more refined level of perception and a more honest level of self confrontation. And part of it would be to have a calm mind, manas. Clarity and stability of manas is important in the learning process, which comes naturally. So in the beginning, you think you're building a ladder. Eventually, you realize you're inside a mandala, a recursive pattern that draws you inward again and again towards the still point of seeing. So if you ever feel like you're back at the beginning, you're not failing, you are circling. And each circle, if done sincerely, brings you closer to the grahas, closer to the self, closer to clarity, closer to self understanding, closer to the illusion of the self, and all of these things. So that's how the system works. It is not by upward escape, but by inward refinement. It's a qualitative experience. Uh, we study the quantities, we study the technicalities, the math, and that math, that rational process of jnana will have a change, a heartfelt change, and that's where real work happens. That's when the realization through reasoning leads to a change and touches your heart in a deeper way through realizations and stuff. So, where are you on the ladder right now? That's the big question. There's no exam to tell you where you are, but there's a question. A simple question. It's just that simple. The question is, what is being asked of me in my study right now? And just answer this honestly, and you know what you need to do. That question will reveal more than any progress bar. And if your Jyotish doesn't work, if you've learned Jyotish and collected all these ideas from the internet, just be honest that I'd like this to be more precise than what it is right now. And then some a suitable direction can be taken. So are you being asked to return to theory because your foundation feels vague? Slow down your technique because you're applying without understanding? Sit with your chart not to interpret it, but to see how it's interpreting you, not just to project something onto your chart and be like, oh, this is so true about me, but really understanding like, what is the chart telling me? The objective analysis. That's why Jyotishis are important. Like we need, especially students need to be given an objective experience of their chart, because they're going to study, we as students are going to study our chart anyway, whether the teacher likes it or not. It would always be better to do that consciously with the student and make them have an understanding and grounding experience of their chart. So this should be part of the curriculum, part of the learning process in Jyotish. So each stage is valid, sacred, and necessary. There is no beginning or advanced here. There's only the depth of your relationship to what you're studying. And so beginning concepts can become advanced, and advanced concepts can be taken in a very dumb fashion, in a very beginner fashion, which is perceived as not advanced, is considered as uh, less insightful or less deep, stuff like it's not like that. It's the depth of your understanding in relationship to whatever you're studying, even if it's a very basic idea. Let's say if, what is sun, for example. So if you're focused on theory, good, build clarity. If you're experimenting with charts, good again, test your perception. If you're wrestling with your own mind, habits, fears, good again. The grahas are alive in you, you're human. Find compassion, more understanding, and figure out all these other uh, psychophysical therapeutic techniques in Ayurveda, yoga, and Vastu and everything, and make it work with Jyotish. And those are the things that help us resolve the issues of the problems that we encounter in Jyotish, the problem statement of our being, the prarabdha. But never forget this. The point is not to master Jyotish. The point is to let Jyotish restructure your way of being way of seeing, and that happens in cycles and not straight lines. So take a moment now. Ask yourself, where am I on the ladder today, and what kind of attention does the stage require of me? How much energy, how much effort, what kind of discipline do I need with the subject matter? That question, when asked often and with sincerity, will guide you far more reliably than any outer metric of success. Charts and certifications and all that validation would not be the right course of action here, I believe. What the right course of action is to really study, and more ideally with one particular teacher, whoever that is. Even if it's a book, just Rishi Parashara, develop a cultivated relationship with Rishi Parashara as your direct teacher. So that question asked often and with sincerity will guide you much better, because the grahas don't respond to cleverness, they respond to clarity, rhythm, humility, and relationship. That is the real study. So that's how we want to study. We want to have a more direct relationship to the subject, to the discipline. So these are the basic ideas we discussed in this lecture. On the theory ladder, the common mistake is over theorizing with no contact. Course correction is return to simplicity and grasp the objective, the aim, the telos. In technique, the common mistake is chasing tricks and not integrating the understanding, not being grounded in one's understanding. Slow down and test your understanding with sincerity and train properly in counseling work. And psychoanalytic, proper Jyotish needs to work properly. Reorientation, mistaking emotion for realization. Course correction is let change show up in perception and not just feeling, like it's an existential change. And feelings also change because of it, but it's not just you believing that today I feel good, so Jyotish has worked for me. Tomorrow I feel bad, so Jyotish has not worked actually. No, it's not about feeling good or bad. It's about understanding the realizations and how you operate when you're not feeling that great. And yeah, so that's a whole, it requires probably its own lecture, own uh, excursive. But we want to, these are the basic, one way to sort of conceptualize the process. And in the next lecture I want to like discuss some of these ideas more deeply on how to study, what to study, things like that. So thank you so much for, if you're still here listening to this lecture. I hope this helped. I've been very sick over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I've been so sick. Now I've finally recovered, and I'm still recovering a little bit. I still have chest congestion and stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this lecture and found this valuable, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you so much.